When we are gone, so too is everything that spewed forth from the Aether. Element 115, the Apothecars, even Monty himself. All of it will be banished to where it belongs. The Dark Aether.
We first heard of these words over 6 years ago now, from the mouth of Nikolai Belinsky, shortly before the ending of the Aether and the beginning of a new singular universe. But to this very day, the truth behind what he meant has still eluded us. With recent suggestions that versions of our beloved original characters have arrived from alternative timelines, it has started to be called into question if Nikolai was even right to begin with, and whether or not their sacrifice was even worth it. Well, I'm here today with some remarkable new evidence from the Black Ops 7 blog post that has illuminated details hidden in the intel of Cold War, Vanguard, and Modern Warfare zombies that may just explain everything about the fate of the old multiverse. This is one hell of a video today, folks, so if you could please leave a like and comment for the algorithm, we can get as many eyes on it as possible before launch day. I really think this could change the game for Black Ops 7 discussion to come.
At the very end of Black Ops 4, our characters sacrificed themselves to collapse the multiverse and try and create a singular world where zombies didn't exist. And they were half right.
Tag to Toten is really the origin point for this. We heard in the map about the banishment of all that had been warped by the Aether would be banished to the Dark Aether, a shadowy twin of the Aether separate from the multiversal web that Element 115 had weaved and shattered throughout that reality. When we first got our introduction to zombies in Black Ops Cold War, we had this idea reaffirmed by none other than the legendary Craig Houston, whose presence is sorely missed in the modern trailers. And I think as a community we can all say we hope he can return soon. He told us explicitly that the sacrifice of Primus and Ultimus wasn't just to banish the things corrupted by the Aether to the Dark Aether, but to collapse the multiverse. This wording is something to keep in mind throughout this video, as it's probably the best way of understanding what I want to pose to you. The Aether was myriad. It had a near infinite number of realities that had been fractured off from the original dimension from the moment of the first teleportation by Richtofen, like a mirror that was continuously being smashed by a hammer. Some of the fragments were larger. Some had been shattered so many times they had become microscopic, but they could keep being shattered over and over, even if they got smaller. We actually saw an example of this in the comics, where one such reality, the empty Earth, was incredibly small, not as we would typically think of in terms of size, but in terms of inhabitants. The empty Earth was a universe with no animal life forms whatsoever, only plants. A scenario that makes no sense evolutionarily. But through this shattering, logic had gone out of the window. As such, when living beings in the form of Victus arrived there, the dimension began to literally collapse. Who knows how many other weird and wonderful dimensions of varying sizes and scales existed in the Aether's multiverse. But by the end of Tag to Toten, they were collapsed, not back into a single coherent real world, but into the Dark Aether itself.
You might have been royalty where I come from, had you not been born on this pathetic ball of dust.
Perhaps the Chronorium didn't tell Nikolai just what the Dark Aether was. Perhaps even the Keepers and Apothecans, who the book was tied to, had no idea, as it was far outside their realm of perception. Who's to say? But what we do know is that it had a very long and storied history. For countless eons, immortal beings fought one another for control in wars on a scale that the human mind couldn't comprehend. We learn through Cortifex's conversations with Von List that Earth is somewhere new to him and his kind. In fact, Cortifex views Earth as rather unremarkable, compared to where he is from. Perhaps he just means the Dark Aether in general, but we have regularly seen the Dark Aether from crossover points on Earth, such as in The Machine, and whilst it is certainly unnerving compared to the real world variation, it's not too different, which would make the comment here pointless. No, I think it's pretty clear that Cortifex is from an entirely different planet to the humans on Earth. And this also helps to explain the scale of the wars in the Dark Aether. If it was one planet, with his power, it really shouldn't have been hard. Instead, a universal war makes far more sense. This might seem like a crazy claim, but it was actually set up in Black Ops Cold War.
I will not be denied. I have crushed armies, ended worlds, devoured gods. You are nothing.
During the boss fight in Forsaken, Zykov tells us outright that he has destroyed many worlds. Given his power, and the fact he clearly has also devoured the gods he spoke of and claimed the powers of the entities from Vanguard, I see no reason why he wasn't lying about this either. So this seems to confirm that there are many worlds with life in the Dark Aether. Even more confirmation is the fact that, unlike in our world, entities in the Dark Aether, including humans, do not need oxygen. The Dark Aether is filled to its entirety with Ethereum, and this is what its entities breathe. This is why in the outbreak zones of the Ural Mountains, Urzikstan, or in the various smaller outbreaks we see in Vanguard, the colossal crystals, called power nodes or atmospheric converters, appear. They are necessary for Dark Aether entities to even live, as without it, they literally cannot breathe or live. They terraform the land. However, if this is the case, and I believe it is, there is something rather strange we have to address.
I don't know how many of your centuries ago it happened, but I remember when we first became aware of your world. Before that, we thought the Dark Aether was, well, everything. Then one day, strange items began to appear in my realm. I speak of things like that pack-a-punch device, and the box that spits out guns. They caused quite an uproar among my kind. How did they work? Where do they come from? And what kind of trouble could I stir up over there? I spent several of your lifetimes just catching glimpses through the dimensional veil. I watched you silly things discover agriculture and start to trade routes, all the basics. So the mechanisms that landed in the Dark Aether must have come from your future. Don't ask me how.
During Cortifex's final campaign, the Nether Wars, that spanned likely tens of thousands of years, something very unexpected occurred. The Mystery Box, Pack-a-Punch, and a whole host of other oddities from the Aether appeared in the midst of battle. Eventually, this led some of the smarter entities within the Dark Aether to conclude that there was another realm outside of theirs. But upon inspection through the dimensional veil, they found only primitive humans, nowhere near advanced enough to produce these devices. We know, of course, that it is because these were from a previous reality. First off, this confirms something that, during Vanguard's release, was big news. These conflicts in the Dark Aether had been going on all throughout, and possibly long before, the Aether storyline. Not a big deal for this video, but definitely worth mentioning. But more importantly, consider what we just talked about. Cortifex wasn't from Earth, and it seems like the entities within the Dark Aether were not even remotely aware or interested in the Dark Aether version of Earth until the Pack-a-Punch and other objects prompted them to look. But these objects appeared in the midst of battlefields all across a universal war. Should they have not all been concentrated on Earth? Recall Craig Houston's quote about what happened to the multiverse. It collapsed. Many universes where 99% of the life and innovation was centered on the Earth were forced into a singular universe. The result of this would surely be that everything would have to spread out, emanating away from the Earth like a seismic wave throughout the singular universe. Traces of the old Aether humans ending up on the furthest flung worlds in existence. Items, artifacts, relics, locations, and possibly even people. But let's pause for a second to address the elephant in the room. We have literally seen new locations in the Dark Aether in Ashes of the Damned, and they seem to be just fine on Earth. If we take a look at the recent blog post, however, we can see that Treyarch have already provided us with a vital puzzle piece of this conundrum. Here, they tell us explicitly that all of these locations arrived in the Dark Aether thanks to a traumatic event that weakened the dimensional veil, and the dates on which they occurred. This is a detail I'm honestly really surprised they've given Toten now, because it seems to confirm that these locations are all from the existing singular universe that was set up and we've been playing in ever since Tag the Toten. If these were from a multiverse, giving a year would ultimately be pointless, as we know that some of these realities had drastic differences, like the Axis powers winning the war. But what about our new characters then? Because we have been told explicitly that they are from other timelines.
They come from different timelines, different realities.
We know from leaks that we are due for maps that are somehow relevant to each of these characters, as we've explored in a recent video. The fact that Takeo especially is a disgraced samurai ronin from a noble clan at the end of Japan's warring states period fits immensely well with the fact that there is some sort of Japanese samurai temple style map rumoured. Why then do we find no trace of these characters' home dimensions and the conflicts we've been specifically told about them coming from in Ashes of the Damned? Because their worlds wouldn't have arrived on Earth. Let's bring all of the pieces together. From Tag the Toten, an entire multiverse of locations, artifacts and people were collapsed into the Dark Aether, a singular universe. As a result, these largely human entities and items found themselves distributed all across the universe, many being discovered during the many battles of the galaxy spanning nether wars. Due to the nature of the events of Tag the Toten, the timing of these arrivals may too have been spread across, with some arriving earlier or later than others, with a lack of oxygen being totally irrelevant due to the ability to breathe Ethereum. A fact confirmed as late as Modern Warfare Zombies by the fact the Dark Aether we visit there is literally in space. Many of these people would have been killed in the Nether Wars and consumed in Zykov's mass conquest of the realm, but referring back to Spragmos' ancient parchment, which reads, "The devoured shall be reborn, the scarred ashes shall be reformed, the Forsaken's torments will be undone, when the old ones reign once more." The old ones, now we can interpret as the Shadowsmiths, now reign again, and as such, all those devoured by the Forsaken will have been ejected back into the Dark Aether. And I can think of 4 warriors who, more than likely, would have been some of those formidable souls who would have put up a fight against Zykov when all of the others died quickly, but ultimately being consumed. Dempsey, Takeo, Nikolai, and Richtofen would have ended up on planets of their own, far away from the Nether Wars, but would have ultimately been consumed by the Forsaken's bloodthirsty wrath. They ought to have returned upon his defeat in 1985, but Eddie's ingenious containment sphere kept him in agony for 5 more years, until his unceremonious defeat in Janus Towers. At this very moment, indeed just before the defeat of Sam or Eddie and the banishment of Requiem, all of the devoured would have sprung back to life, and suddenly we have our reason for the appearance of these alternative reality versions of our characters at this moment, suddenly reformed, along with anything else consumed by Zykov. Now, we not only have an explanation for how our characters suddenly return from alternative timelines, but also how we will reach other maps. After all, we literally see a cosmodrome in the map. Is it not possible we could use something like the rocket, or an iconic lunar lander to reach future maps, given the space aspect of the Dark Aether has been hinted at for so long? I think Treyarch would be absolute fools to pass up this amazing opportunity to follow up on all of this old lore. Before I leave you for this video, let's go back to the beginning, or rather, the end.
Lastly, canon is canon, and we've put a story to rest. But as you comb through this new universe, don't be surprised if some things don't want to stay dead.
Tag the Toten has always occupied a very weird place. It's not a pocket dimension like Mob of the Dead, but it's clearly a pocket realm. After all, Pablo is incapable of leaving the lighthouse. A cycle. These pockets are always connected to the Dark Aether, and Tag the Toten seems no different. In addition though, we see one of the most bizarre secrets in all of zombies. In fact, it is the secret. We swim through the ice and appear on the surface of the moon of Phobos, as if it were like the hollow earth but far smaller, and we gaze off to Mars, somehow able to breathe despite being in space. Now, if this is a pocket of the Dark Aether, but the Dark Aether is only one dimension, well surely it would have to be placed away from Earth, on a celestial body, but one smaller than a planet, and the Ethereum there, well, it would allow anyone on its surface to breathe, would it not? Or maybe it's simply a liminal space. Anyways, leave your thoughts down in the comments below. Of course, we'll get all the answers pretty soon. And moving into the DLC. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not for the latest and greatest Call of Duty news and information. So anyways, thanks for watching, and bye.